if you find that your wax is starting to build up, or maybe the wax is built up a bit, but kind of like that chapstick in the dirt scenario, it's got a lot of extra debris on it, you can simply take some 3D material, or you can take like a floss. You're going to simply wrap it once around the string, pull it tight, and then slide it down the string on the bow. That's actually going to strip any of that excess debris, dirt, and wax off of the bow. That would be a prime time, if you chose to do so, to re-wax to get all that debris out there and get those strings cleaned up. Welcome to the Soul Summit podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Prete. I'm here to help bridge the gap for women and families in the outdoors, build a community of adventure junkies, and roll out your weekly dose of positive vibes. With almost 2 decades in the health and fitness world and an untamable passion for hunting in the outdoors, my mission is to help you live your bucket list life and move boldly in the direction of your dreams. Meet us here weekly as I connect with like-minded outdoor men and women to discuss health and mindset, accountability, life and entrepreneurship, as well as all things hunting and epic untold stories. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of the Soul Summit podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Prete, and today I want to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is archery, but not any kind of topic when it comes to archery. We're talking about how to maintain your compound bow, common things that you should do to help make sure that your equipment is working correctly, that you're staying dialed in for any archery or hunting opportunities, and that you're never risking your safety. You always want to make sure that your bow is working well. So today we'll cover a few different areas of bow maintenance so that you can stay on top of your game. Before we jump into this episode, I want to go over a few announcements and reminders that we have. And we just launched the archery camp at Hoodoo in collaboration with the Northwest Mountain Challenge. We are super excited to be doing this event up there again at Hoodoo Ski Resort. And this is such a fun, family-friendly environment to be a part of. And of course, the HOJ archery camp that happens there is one that can be so impactful and so empowering on your archery journey. So be sure to check out the show notes for those details. But of course, you can always find what's going on with the Her Outdoor Journey events over on the website over there. Browse all of the events. And I will also let you know that there is a Mother's Day sale going on where you can save on all of our outdoor events and experiences now through May 14th. So go ahead and take advantage of that sale going on. No code needed. Just hop over to heroutdoorjourney.com to see all of the events happening right now. And I would also be a bit remiss if I didn't remind you that the mother-daughter event giveaway is going on, which is sponsored by Tricer Tripods. Now, this is the chance for one mother-daughter duo to come, all expenses paid, to this wonderful retreat on the Oregon coast coming up this summer. So be sure to also check out the show notes where you can get nominated there, or you can nominate another deserving mother-daughter duo that you think would absolutely love this event. With the warmer months here and going into competitive 3D archery season, it's a perfect time. I know so many people have their bows in their hand. You know, it can be really easy to put your bow away at the end of the fall season and not touch it too much in between then and when you start up again in the spring or summer. When we're talking about bow maintenance, there are lots of different types of bow maintenance. Some that we do every time we shoot, some that we do more intermittently, like maybe after or before the season. But today we'll go over all of those things. I do want to let you know that if you're listening to this, you can also be watching it over on YouTube. And if you choose to watch this episode of the Soul Summit podcast on the Her Outdoor Journey YouTube channel, you'll also get an intro where we go over all of the bow anatomy so that you know exactly what you're looking at, exactly what we're talking about in this episode, and maybe even learn a few things about your bow that you didn't know before. Before we dive into today's episode of the Soul Summit podcast, talking all about compound bow maintenance, I first want to give a quick rundown of the bow's anatomy. That way you can quickly identify what terms we're using to talk about different parts to the bow. The main part of this bow here is going to be called the riser. Now, the riser also is attached to the grip, which you'll find here. And then on top of the grip, you'll see the arrow shelf. Now, we usually replace this in most shooting situations with a rest that you'll put on there. We also have my bow sight here. We have our limb pockets, our limb bolts, and this is a split limb bow. Now, this limb drives over to the cam. This is a dual cam bow, so it doesn't have a wheel on one side. You've also got your axles. So the point of axle is here. You'll hear commonly people talk about the axle to axle length. That is what we're referring to here. We've also got the string stopper. So this is meant to make sure that the string's not coming too far in. Sometimes this can get loose. You can check the Allens here to make sure that that just comes to touch that string right there. We also have your peep sight, which is tied in here so it's not slipping or moving. You've got the strings, you've got the cables. The string is what actually pulls the bow back, but the cables do most of the work. Now you'll also notice that this little guy right here, your cable slide or your cable guard or your roller guard, they're called different things, actually work to keep those cables out of the way of the string. So that's pulling that back to the side. So you'll have that. These can look very different on different bows. Stabilizer. I have more than one stabilizer, so I also have a sidebar. This will pivot out so I can achieve different counterbalances here. We have the quiver. This is mounted on, this is Hoyt system. This is a two, I can't remember exactly what they're calling this quiver, but it mounts in these two places here. So that's my quiver. We also have these here, which are vibration and noise dampeners. Now these can look very different on different bows, and not all bows will have them. So if you're not seeing those on your bow, that's okay. We also have this section here. These are called knock points. This is basically adding weight to your strings to help with performance. This is going to be your center serving here, which is what your D loop attaches to. This is going to be just slightly thicker than what your string is. These center sections will be your servings. Now today, when we're talking about waxing to wax or not wax, and I reference waxing the strings but avoiding the serving sections where it goes into the cam, these are the sections that we're talking about here. So be mindful of that. We don't want to have any extra wear or any waxing really near where the serving is on the strings where it touches the cams. This is a really critical time to be making sure that your equipment is operating correctly, that your strings are in good shape, and that there aren't any issues that could be keeping you for your best archer game and your most consistent shooting. I always like to say that your bow should feel like a natural extension of your body. And the same goes for knowing it intimately. The more you know your bow and you can learn it through maintenance, the more confident you can feel and the more confidence that you can have. If something were to go wrong, you could feel it, you could see it, or you could spot it right away so it doesn't become a problem or potentially hazardous to yourself. Your bow and the way that these mechanisms work are meant to work in a specific way, and many of these are meant to work simultaneously and almost in unison so that everything is happening at the same time to allow you to gain the most consistency in your shot, and also to make sure that everything is running smoothly together. There's lots of different kinds of tuning that you can do with your bow, and you'll hear people, especially if you're, in other resources or maybe watching some different videos online, you can hear people commonly talk about bow tuning. Now, there's lots of different kinds of tuning that you can do with your bow. In this episode today, the tuning that we're talking about is paper tuning. So you want all of these things to be happening together. And if you have an issue, like maybe your timing is off with your cams, or maybe your D loop has slipped, you're going to start to notice some inconsistencies in your shots over time. Every time maintenance is going to be every time you go out and shoot. These are the things that you're going to be really paying attention to and going over your bow, making sure that you know exactly how these things are looking or operating. Number one, do a visual look. You're going to be looking for any cracks or fraying, anything that looks loose or sounds loose. You're going to look at your strings, make sure your serving looks okay, make sure everything looks like new, essentially. If you're seeing any of those, fraying or any extra wear to your serving or your strings or even your cable, you'll definitely want to make note of that. So always looking over the entirety of your bow. Also, listen. I always say listening to your bow or your shot can be one of the first signs. Now, you can back up a step and say, does it feel right when I draw my bow back? Does everything feel and operate smoothly? Am I hearing any weird noises or cracks or pops or anything that sounds like maybe friction where something isn't moving the way that it's intended to? So always listen and feel as well. You'll also be wanting to just keep it clean, keep your bow clean. Now, I feel like right now I'm kind of preaching more than I practice because I'm pretty hard on my gear, to be honest. And there are times where my bow becomes a machete, or other times where I've done a creek crossing and I've thrown my gear across. And so I'm not the easiest on my gear, which makes the maintenance piece so much more important. So, especially if you're out in dusty or debris filled areas, or if you're using your bow kind of like I do as a tool sometimes, I would say just give it a wipe down, making sure that you get any loose particles of dust or rocks kind of away from the bow, making sure that it stays clean. And then also pay special attention to like high impact or high wear areas. You're serving around your D loop, the serving around your cams. And then also, if you are the kind of person that gets in the habit of when you set your bow down, maybe putting the cam first in the rocks or setting it down in the mud, be sure that none of that debris is getting into the string. You don't want anything in the track of that cam that can create issues with the string or with the serving pieces in there, or just create other issues when you come to full draw. So every time you go out and shoot your bow, make sure you're always giving it a once over visually, but you're also listening and feeling the indications that something doesn't look, sound, or feel right. Now, you also might be starting to think about wax. Now, waxing your strings is something that you'll hear thrown around a lot in the archery community, and everybody has a different opinion on this. Some people are very pro waxing, and other people aren't. Now, I also want to note you can use things like a mineral oil instead of a good quality wax if you do choose to wax your strings. Now, for me, again, this is just a personal preference, but I'm somebody who wasn't consistently waxing. So years ago, when I first got my bow and, I was getting lots of shots down range, I wasn't waxing consistently. Now, one of the things that you'll want to do is if you choose to wax or use mineral oil on your strings, you'll want to do it routinely instead of going with areas and times where you wax your strings and then long periods where you don't. I would say just try to keep the consistency, either wax them or don't wax them, but don't find yourself kind of doing both. One or the other seems to work well here. And I will say you definitely want to focus on a good quality wax or mineral oil. You'll also want to make sure that you can wax your serving, but be sure not to wax any of the serving, especially where it will roll into your cam or around your cam. You'll also want to apply it lightly. You don't want to gob the wax on. And I always say, waxing your bowstrings is kind of like putting on chapstick and then going out in the dust. If you leave it on and it's globby and it's cakey on the strings and cables, what's going to happen is it's like putting on that chapstick and walking outside where there's lots of dust or debris. It's only going to draw that dryness and those particles to that string itself. So be sure that you have any excess rubbed into the string and nothing excess on the outside of the strings or cables. One really great pro tip that I got from fellow archer John Dudley of Knock On Archery is if you find that your wax is starting to build up, or maybe the wax is built up a bit, but kind of like that chapstick in the dirt scenario, it's got a lot of extra debris on it. You can simply take some 3D material, or you can take like a floss. You're going to simply wrap it once around the string, pull it tight, and then slide it down the string on the bow. That's actually going to strip any of that excess debris, dirt, and wax off of the bow. That would be a prime time, if you chose to do so, to re-wax to get all that debris out there and get those strings cleaned up. One common area that can get damaged on your bow are the cams. Now, we can see this if somebody gets into the habit, as I mentioned earlier, of maybe setting their bow on the ground or kind of resting. Maybe you're at a 3D shoot and you're in between shots, or you're out on the range waiting for somebody else. When you're setting that cam down, cam first into the dirt or the rocks or whatever, you have the potential of getting either frays to the serving around the strings on that cam, getting debris in the cam track itself, or causing issues or scratches that can wear and tear the string over time. So be really careful that your cam looks good, that it's not bent, that it's not chipped, doesn't have any dings, that it all looks okay. Pay close attention as you come to full draw. Can you feel any differences? Now, you want your cams to roll over at the same time. So you want your top and bottom to be rolling at the same time. If by chance you feel one rollover before the other, something might feel off in that draw cycle. This would be a good opportunity to shoot it through paper, whether you have a paper tuning system at your house or you head to your local archery shop to shoot it through paper there. Another part of this weekly check is going to be making sure that everything is tight. So with most of these compound bows, you're shooting them with a rest, you're shooting them with a sight, potentially a quiver, a stabilizer. So make sure that all of these components, that they haven't come loose. Check, use your Allen wrenches to check the bolts, make sure everything is still bolted down and nothing is moving. That's kind of this weekly checklist is everything looking and feeling right? Have I checked my cables and strings? Is my cable guard sliding correctly? Is my bow clean and free of debris? And do I feel or notice or hear any differences? Now, these are going to be the things that I'm constantly paying attention to throughout my shooting and throughout anytime I'm practicing or on the range. Now, let's fast forward and talk about seasonal maintenance. So these are the things that you might do quarterly or before or after a season. And these are things that you need to do a little less commonly, but they're certainly still critical to the integrity and to your consistency as an archer. And then also just really paying attention to the integrity and the overall wear on your strings. Now, as you're checking this weekly, or maybe this is a part of your seasonal check, you might notice some fraying, or maybe a little bit of wear and tear to the string. Now, this doesn't mean that you automatically have them replaced. It's recommended about every 2,500 shots or every 2 to 3 years or so, you have your bow strings and cables replaced. Now, that's going to be a little bit different for everybody. And also how your bow's been treated throughout the year is also going to play into how frequently you need to have the bow strings and cables replaced. So be sure to pay attention to that. Sometimes you can get some extra fraying or wear to your D loop. And this is something that I frequently see. Sometimes there can be a burr or some sort of an imperfection on the hook mechanism of your release. That can cause some extra fraying to your D loop. Also, sometimes if we're using a release mechanism that puts too much torque or twist on the D loop, that can also cause issues where your D loop can actually get loose over time or can get frayed to the point that it can break. Now, this is actually one thing that's happened to one of my bows. It actually happened to a bow technician over at the archery shop. He was doing a chrono for me before season where I was going to redo the tape on my bow sight. And he took my bow in the back and he came back a little while later and he was like, "You'll never guess what happened. I punched myself in the face. Your D loop broke about mid draw." So always be watching that. In fact, just at one of our recent archery camps, one of the gals came and she had noticed the fraying to her D loop, but didn't really understand that this could be something critical or dangerous potentially. So make sure that if you're seeing any of that, you consult with somebody else if you're not sure if it's detrimental enough or you should still be shooting it. But again, if you have any fraying to your strings, if you have any serving that's coming undone, or you're seeing visible nicks, or anything that we just mentioned, make sure that you're getting it checked out before you draw it and fire it too much. You never want to compromise something happened while you're at full draw or while you're in the drawing process that could be detrimental. Now, let's talk about paper tuning just a little bit. You might be out on the range and say you've been shooting pretty consistently and you've been getting a decent amount of reps in, and all of a sudden things just feel off and the point of impact in your arrows is all over the place. Maybe you're getting, some flyers and you're like, man, that felt like a good shot, but it was, high or low or right or left. You want to make sure that when you're shooting through paper, you've got a perfect bullet hole. Now, if you're getting a right or a left tear, that could be an indication of facial pressure. So be mindful of that. If you're not sure if you're getting too much arrow contact or string contact on your face, I recommend getting a video or asking somebody to come over and video you while you're shooting. This is something that I've even done in the past. I didn't realize just exactly how much facial pressure I was getting to my string. If you're shooting through paper and you're getting a right or left tear, it's recommended that you start by moving your rest in the opposite direction of the deviation. Now, the opposite will be true for a high or low tear. You're actually going to move your rest in the same direction of that tear. And ultimately, again, what you want to achieve is that perfect bullet hole. While you're paper tuning your bow, your shot and your break totally matter. Every time you shoot through paper, you want it to be you shooting it through paper because only you can shoot your bow the way that you can shoot your bow. And you want to make sure that you're shooting your shot every time. That means everything from your grip to your release, your anchor points, and the rate at which you actually squeeze or engage that trigger. While you're doing this seasonal maintenance, if there are things that you are not feeling comfortable with or maybe unsure of, or maybe if this is something that's newer to you, I highly recommend linking up with your local archery shop, taking your bow into a bow technician and having them give it the once over and of course the thumbs up. This will make sure you're as prepared as possible for any opportunities and of course your most consistent archery game. Now let's dive into some other things that can add more wear and tear over time to your bow. One of them is we're talking about water. Water can be something that can not only deteriorate your strings, but also can cause corrosion and rusting through your bow's components, and certainly something that you don't want to have happen. Now, if you're hunting around saltwater or have your bow in an area where it has exposure to saltwater, be extra careful that you're rinsing that off. That will obviously speed up how quickly things can rust. So make sure that after any time out in the rain or snow, before you put your bow away, or at the end of your excursion, we'll call it, make sure that you're drying your bow off. You don't want to put that away, especially if it's in a contained area with moisture. Could also cause molding if you're putting it inside of a bow case of any sort. So be sure that you're getting all of that excess moisture off of your bow and your strings. Now, talking about cases, I want to say I highly recommend for travel that you get a nice case, something that's hard-sided that won't get bumped around or smashed, especially if you're going to be traveling via airplane. Make sure that you have a good case, of course, and some locks to go with that as well. You don't want things to be smashed. We talked about water, but let's talk about heat. Heat can obviously damage a lot of things, and your bow is no exception. I highly recommend trying to avoid any time storing your bow in a hot car or vehicle, especially for an extended period of time. I also don't recommend leaving it out in the sun. Maybe you have the luxury of living at a place where you can go outside in your backyard and shoot your bow. Be sure if you decide to leave your bow outside during the day that it is not directly exposed to the elements. While we're talking about our bow, I want to talk about some costly common mistakes. One of them is dry firing. Dry firing can happen to anybody. It can happen because your adrenaline gets heightened. It can happen because you got distracted. It could happen because you're trying a new release. And so you're just off of your normal routine. There's a variety of reasons that you can get outside of your shot process and go to draw that bow and fire before you've knocked an arrow. I also want to say, if you have this happen, no, it's okay and it happens to everybody. Also, be sure to have your bow checked. If you don't feel comfortable doing that yourself, take it into a local bow shop. All you have to simply whisper to them behind the counter is, I accidentally dry fired my bow. Now, they should treat you with absolute respect, but it's important for them to know what happened so that they can check the right areas, ensuring that your bow is not compromised and still safe to shoot. Another common mistake is allowing other people to shoot your bow. While it's so generous of you to think about offering the experience or letting somebody else try your bow or see what it feels like, everybody has a different draw length, everybody has a different anchor, everybody's mechanics to drawing a bow and their release can be different, which can cause issues during the drawing process. Don't avoid weird popping, sounds, feelings, or if things don't look right. This is the first indication that something's going wrong. And the more you get into the routine of maintaining your bow, understanding those components, and getting really dialed in and very present with your shot process, you'll be able to identify more quickly when things may not be exactly right on your bow or your setup. Maintaining your bow will allow you to have confidence in your shot process, in your consistency, in your overall archery game. So make sure that you're taking the time to go over your bow, whether that is every time you're using it, in your weekly maintenance schedule, and of course, for all of your seasonal maintenance. Don't forget, right now, we are running the Masterclasses with the Pros series. We've got Morgan Wines, Amanda Rose, Sierra Jepson, Jess Caldwell, Kim Palmer-Nix, Tawny Ledger, and more. This is going to be a highly impactful, hands-on virtual masterclass that you can take from anywhere for free. So head over to the show notes now to get the link to sign up and make sure that you're on the list for Masterclasses with the Pros. We'll be learning all kinds of things like glassing 101, introduction to firearms for women, butchery skills, foraging, and so much more. Don't forget to check out Masterclasses with the Pros. The link is in the show notes. Well, friends, I hope you've enjoyed another episode of the Soul Summit podcast, and we hope that this equips and empowers you on your archery journey. We highly recommend, if you want to take your bow hunting or archery skills to the next level, head over to heroutdoorjourney.com and check out the incredible archery camps that we have coming up here in 2025. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. They are so much fun. And again, we have the mother-daughter retreat giveaway going on. You can nominate yourself or another awesome mother-daughter duo to win that all expenses paid trip. That's going to be an incredible one coming up this summer here on the Oregon coast. And of course, you can find all of our extra links and discounts in the show notes. Before you hop off today, can I ask a favor? If you've enjoyed this episode or this season of the Soul Summit podcast, would you leave us a review? It would mean the world to me, and it helps us grow our audience to have people like you share your feedback about our show. We would also love for you to like and subscribe and maybe even share it with a friend. Let's get the word out there and help more outdoor men and women tackle the adventure. See you next time on the Soul Summit podcast. The Soul Summit podcast is brought to you by Maven Optics, Baku e-bikes, Hoyt Archery, Onyx Maps, and Sawyer Products. For more information on these companies or to access the Soul Summit podcast discount codes, be sure to check out our show notes.